Please work. Please work. Please work. Come on. Come on, Zoom. Hey.
Okay. Yeah, this is better. I can adjust this one.
There you go. You're looking at me too. You looking
yes,
at
I can see. I was feeling like I was cross-eyed. I was like, I don't know which side to look at.
Okay.
I've never used. I know now not to use
Yeah,
the iPad for stuff like this.
Stay away from the iPad on this.
Yes, I gotta stay away from the iPad because that is not right. Okay, sorry about that.
No. Well, I'm sorry that I can't get this Facebook Live to work, but we'll just record it. Like I said, we'll record it, and then I'm getting text messages from people now asking where are we, but they're gonna let them know that we're having technical difficulties, and we'll post it later today.
Okay.
But how are you doing today?
I am good. I'm good. I'm actually good. I've been at a conference today, and I'm doing well.
Yeah, you're doing well. You're doing big things, Latasha. You are doing big things. I've been following, watching you. I haven't seen you or spoken to you since I think it was 2015 at the NYWC conference in San Diego.
That was. I think were we in the one in
San Diego?
I can't remember. San Diego.
San Diego, yeah.
I remember that because it was super hot in October, and they're like, we never get this hot, and I was like, but you did when we were there.
It's hot now. You got it today.
It was like 90.
It was hot, and I had like sweatshirts and jeans. And I was just hot.
Yeah, because it typically doesn't get that hot there, especially in October. And so yeah, that was so funny.
Yeah. But since then you have done a lot. Your organization has blown up, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. But you moved from Austin to Atlanta.
Yes, I relocated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that back home or?
Yes. So I consider Atlanta home. I lived here before moving to Texas.
Okay.
And once I transitioned out of a full-time job at a church there, just really wanted to get back to the East Coast. My family is here. My friends are here. And then, when you think of the work that I'm doing, Atlanta, this is the home of the civil rights movement. This is MLK's home. And I really wanted to get things happening on the East Coast more and in this Atlanta area. And so it's really been good being back. I miss Austin. I love Austin. That's always to be my home away from home, but it's good to be back in Atlanta.
Yeah. I love Atlanta. I was this close to going to Morehouse.
I was gonna go to the house.
I was gonna go to the house.
Like a brotherhood there.
Yeah, it is for sure. But moved from Austin to Atlanta. You were featured on Ebony's was it like top 100?
Yeah, I think it was 2017. I was the Power 100.
Wow. With Oprah and
in 2017. And at the same time that was happening, that's the time I was moving. So all that, I think that was announced in December. I moved that November back to Atlanta. So it's been a lot. That Ebony thing is so funny because your family, they saw things that I was doing, things that, little articles and stuff like that. But you know how family will keep you, what you would say, humble.
They keep you humble.
They will keep you really humble in the sense where, my family didn't really know, like, what is it that you do again? Or, why are you doing that?
Right.
But when the Ebony thing happened, that was like a game changer for my family because, like, most family, they may not know who what relevant is. They may not know Christianity today. They don't know all these different things, these platforms and stuff. You know, my family in North Carolina, they go to a missionary Baptist church. You know, they don't know all this stuff. And, but when you say Ebony and Jet, that's what they know.
That's what they know.
So,
they got, my grandmother has her Bible, her Ebony, and her Jet. You
yes.
know, so that's what it is.
Yeah, and so they knew that it was the funniest thing, because my dad, he's really calm and collective, and he doesn't get excited over a lot of things, and he plays it cool, you know, but that Ebony thing, he was so excited, and he invited himself. He was like, who is going with you to the reception? I'm going.
Yes. That's awesome.
So it was so cute. It was so cute, but it was a lot of fun. So it was an honor, you know, to be, I would say this, Trey, you know, in doing this work, it was an honor to be recognized by your community. You know, that meant a lot. That meant a lot to me. Yeah.
It does. It does. Yeah. But congratulations on that. Also,
thank you.
Ebony's a big deal. Facebook as well is a big deal, and you were you received the Facebook grant, I believe.
Yes.
The Bridge received the Facebook grant for a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
Yes. And Facebook, you're on the Facebook, in the Facebook leadership program or something like that.
Yeah, it's called you know, Facebook Community Leadership Program. And so one of the things that Facebook is doing is really trying to pour into organizations that are doing things out online that translate offline, because they're all about community. If you look at them redoing their vision and everything, they're really all about community. And I mean, when we think about, you know, social media, any platform could be used for good or it could be used for bad. But you think about even how you're using Facebook, this tool now, to communicate to your congregation, how many people use it for small groups and you know, trips and, you know, trip groups and business, and so many things are happening on these social media platforms. And so one of the things how we're using it is to really do racial literacy work and anti-racism work that can lead to push us toward reconciliation. And so that's how we're using it. And so with Facebook, you know, when I started Be the Bridge, it was kind of like, okay, I want to do something where we can kind of curate some conversation online so that people, they don't live in Austin, they're not able to have these discussions with me. You know, people are downloading this guide. Okay, where do we send people if they don't have a website? I wasn't an organization at the time. I was just a local church girl that's like, okay, we need to do something about this, you know? And so, you know, I didn't have a website, you know, and so what did I do? I created a Facebook group, you know, and you're able to make that secure and private, and they've grown that process, you know, even since we started our group. So many things are adding to it to make it even a more healthier space, you know. They're always updating it, but yeah. And so, you know, just being recognized for that, and some of the opportunities that they offer through that. And so I'm walking through this leadership program with them as a residency. I'm the only one from North America, and they have been great as far as, you know, embracing my full person as a person of faith, you know. I was kind of like wondering, like, okay, here's this big organization, like, am I going to really be able to be fully me? And one of the great things about it is that's what they want, you know. You know, there's so many organizations that are using their platform, and they're really trying to create tools for everyone, you know. And so yeah, so it's been a great experience. There's some brilliant people there that are walking alongside, trying to make sure that I have the infrastructure and the sustainability that we need to keep this work going. And so it's been incredible, and it's been a great experience for me. I think it also, when you talk about bridge building, I think there's some bridge building going on there, because it's taken me outside this bubble that
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to living in, also in this faith-based world. And it's, I'm meeting people and we're having meetups with people from Singapore, a part of the people that are part of my class, the residency, one is from Brazil, one is from Kenya,
Wow.
one is from France, the other one is from India. And so connecting with people who are different from me, even in this space, has been such a learning experience. And just really seeing, how their desires to bring transformation to their communities just in different areas,
Right.
so it's incredible. And we're learning from each other. They're learning about, wow, I read that article you post. I didn't know that was happening, So it's exposing them to different things too about America and just our story, even as African Americans. So it's been
Wow,
good.
that's amazing, Latasha.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So I've got a couple questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
That was just a little
Let's
warm
go.
up. That was just a little
Okay,
warm up.
just go. Let's go.
Okay, so first of all, let's back up a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you. Now, first of all, let me set the tone. So the Specs movement is an organization that we created through our church to promote racial reconciliation in Keller and surrounding areas. And so we just have events where we invite people to speak and share their stories. The heart of Specs is hearing different perspectives. Because when we hear different perspectives, it impacts our perspective and allows us to see a world that maybe we wouldn't see otherwise. But the heart of it is to promote racial reconciliation, and so these conversations are around race and people's stories around race,
Right.
and so not only our church is a part of this, but just the community, and so people in the Keller area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, are kind of a part of our tribe where we have these events quarterly and these conversations quarterly to promote racial reconciliation and to build relationships and different things like that. And so what I would love for you to do is just start by telling us a little bit about you, a little bit of your story, and maybe when was it that you first realize that you live in a racialized world? Maybe there was a specific situation. I know for me there's a specific situation, but when was it that you really realized, man, this is different? There's some issues in this country and in this world.
Yeah, I think I would take it to three incidents, and like three, I think, catalytic type events. For me, like you said, my name is Latasha. I've been involved in probably the ministry world probably for about the last 22 years. Right out of college. And with me, I started out for about 10 years in corporate America. I worked for Coca-Cola. I worked for Ernst & Young, and this company called Wang, during the early days of the software, technology was really starting to take off and stuff like that. And I worked for those companies as a technology consultant, and totally not my background, but I was going for the money. Where the money is. And so moving to Atlanta, there were a lot of startup opportunities for that. But one of the things I noticed in the last job that I had was Ernst & Young. And I noticed that there was just, and also I noticed it in Coca-Cola, there were a lot of initiatives towards diversity. Just when you would have to do continuing education classes and stuff like that, a lot of the stuff was around, cultural competency, just all type of things. You think about the reach of Coca-Cola, it's a global brand, people in some areas, they may not have food, but there's Coke there, it's just amazing to me, stuff like that. And so, and I started paying attention to stuff like that. And then being in a predominantly African-American church at that time, we would venture out into conferences that were, led by John Maxwell, at that time, Rick Warren, Andy Stanley, all these different things we were exposed to, and going to youth specialties and all these different things. And I would go into these environments and I'm like, wow, I don't see myself there. Like, what, the church is really segregated. So I think that is one of the things that, in being in ministry in African American church, I saw the initiatives that we took to be bridge builders and to go into these spaces, but I never saw that reciprocated into our spaces and into our events and into the conferences that were led by African Americans,
Yeah.
And so that was one thing. But I think leading up to that, one of the catalytic events was Trayvon Martin. That was one thing. And then I would take it back a little bit before that to high school, where I was trying to, as a leader of part of the student government, I was trying to get Black History Month a part of our school program. I was leading that effort because we had to take leadership development classes. And so as a student council member, and so you would do the activities and anything that the student body needed. We were the class that did that, and they would teach you the laws of leadership, Robert's laws, all these different things we would go through in high school. And I think that's when I started to use my voice, because I got shut down in class by the other students. My high school was very diverse. It was like 13%. I would say minority. So it wasn't like it was, I wasn't you weren't the only one in your environments or classrooms. I saw teachers, teachers of all ethnicities that were present in our schools. So it was, pretty diverse school in North Carolina. But I remember that was the time I realized, like, oh my goodness, when I got shut down in that class, when I said, hey, it's February, we've never done anything for Black History Month, and I would love to do something, and here's some ideas, and I presented my idea. And I remember this one kid saying, well, are we going to have Italian History Month? And I remember thinking, like, first of all, like, that's white, and we celebrate your history every day, but I didn't have the language that I have now. I didn't understand the things. But I think that's when I realized, like, wow, these are my friends, but they're not really my friends. We don't really know each other. And
Right.
So fast forward to Trayvon Martin happening. And at that time, I was in a predominantly white church at that time. And just some of the conversations that happened along that, I was like, wow, we live among each other. Like, we're at church together, but we don't know each other. We're not, we don't talk about these things. We're not talking about these things. And so I think that was some of the things where I was like, wow, we are in a racialized society. Like, that it's the air that we breathe, it's the water that we drink. And there's a lot of different systems that are at work that we don't even understand. And I think those were the things, the Trayvon Martin thing was really that point of doing something, I think before it was kind of like, you know what, you want to segregate yourself more so rather than deal with it.
Right.
But I think for me, where God was calling me into these spaces, I could not be in these spaces and just assimilate and go along and not address or not try to talk about or try to be a help. Because guess what? I love my white brothers and sisters just like I love my brown brothers and sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I want to see some solidarity there. I want you to understand, hey, there's a different side, and probably the lens that you're looking through is a little foggy,
Yeah.
and I wanted to do that. And so I think those were some of the starting points. And then in the book that I'm writing, that'll come out October 2019.
Hey.
I tell the story about just a conversation that I had from a lady at church, and there was an article that just posted that just talked about it, and it was basically her view on slavery, and she just made a comment to me that was like shocking. And this was a Christian woman. She wasn't trying to be malicious. I know that, but impact. That wasn't her intent,
Right.
but her impact.
Yeah.
It hit me to my core, and it really bothered me. But that was the thing, that the conversation that truly launched Be the Bridge in me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think something like this, what we birth, and this with your church and all that, any mission or vision that we birth, it first has to be birthed in you,
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that was the thing. It birthed it in me, where to the point where I couldn't sleep, I couldn't rest. Like, it was bothering me to my core. I call it that holy discontent. I think I heard a pastor use that terminology. He wrote a book on it a couple of years ago. But like that holy discontent where you can't shake it, that was what was happening to me. And I kept hearing the word be the bridge, just crazy, not trying to be spooky, but it was a word I used to use when I was in church and leading groups. And I would say, I feel like we're like a bridge, we can go into different environments. I would always say that. And anybody that was a part of that church, that they know that I was leading that staff, I would say that all the time. And and I think God just brought this thing full circle. And when I had a life plan done, my 3 words, my life words is leadership, change agent, and guess what? Bridge builder. It's who I am to my core.
Yeah.
So it's not anything new. It's something that I've always been. You can ask my family from the time I was young. I was that person that was like that peacemaker in the family. So yeah, those are probably the 3 things that I can think of that really allowed me to see and then launch, like, I want to be a part of the solution.
Yeah. So I think that's a perfect segue to the next question. Tell us a little bit about Be the Bridge. Like, I see the backstory. You share with us
Right.
kind of backstory of how this country, this world, your experiences have impacted you in school, in high school, trying to do the February Black History deal, the Trayvon Martin situation, and the conversations that happened as a result of that, and this side and that side, and so you get this idea of Be the Bridge. Tell us a little bit about it and what it is for those who maybe aren't completely familiar with it.
Yeah, and so Be the Bridge is actually, an organization. We want to inspire people to have transformative, distinct conversations around racial healing in America, and so we do this through a process. We've created a process that takes people on a journey, because a lot of times when people hear the word reconciliation, it's a word that's overused and we don't truly know what it is.
Yeah.
And so through this process, by the end of this process, it's not saying that we will be reconciled. It's saying that you would understand what it takes to get to reconciliation and how we move toward that. So that's why we say be the bridge, moving toward reconciliation. And I really hold that word dear because I feel like that's the ministry that God has given us. And I know everyone, always says, how can it be reconciliation? There's never, never any ciliation, but I look at it from the fact of what Christ did on the cross for us. We can be reconciled to God and in turn be reconciled to one another. And so that's a word that for me, that's just for me. I am in full agreement when people don't understand and don't want to use that they can definitely do that. But for me, I hold that word dearly because it gives me something to hope for, and so and to long for, and and so I think for us, we know that people, a lot of times we want people to understand what certain things look like as it relates to racial justice and all these different things, but when people don't even understand what race is, that is a political and social construct. When people, and you see this I mean, we see this displayed every week on TV when people don't even know what racism is, that it's not individual acts, you know, that it's a system and how it impacts these systems like the healthcare system, how it impacts the judicial system, the education system, the religious system. When we don't understand that, we're trying to talk about racial justice and people are at A and we're trying to talk, ST to them, Yeah. And so what we want to do is kind of take people through that step 1, step 2. And I think in some areas we can be step 3 so that they are ready for the step 4 organizations, the step 5 organizations that can even, once they understand that foundation, they can do the work of what racial justice looks like, so preparing people to hear from some of these voices that are not necessarily helping people in the first stages, and because I think we all have a part in this conversation, and everybody's conversation is not at the front door of the conversation. Some people's conversation is in the house. Some people's conversation is at the back door. We all have a different role. And I think with Be the Bridge, I think we're the welcome area in some sense, but welcome to the point where you know that something is broken. You are aware that something is broken and you want to know more and understand to be a part of the solution. That is our target audience. Our target audience are not people who are trying to still believe if there's racism. That's not my target audience. Yeah. That's more of a heart condition. And I don't know about you, but I can't repair hearts. That's not my job, Yeah. And so we have to get people when they're on this journey of awareness. That's where it starts for Be the Bridge. Now, maybe there's some other organizations that do more of the racial apologetics or something like that. That's not us though, but there's room for that out there too.
Well, I'll just say our church right now is going through the Bridge to Racial Unity discussion guide.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In our small groups. And,
okay.
We're using, these.
You have the cards too.
We got the cards. We're in the game. We are in the game. And so
you are in it. Oh, yes, my goodness.
All our small groups are doing it. We realized we don't just want to be a diverse church, of people who come together on Sunday.
Exactly.
And then they go out, during the week and kind of live their lives and celebrate the fact that, hey, we go to this diverse church.
Pat yourself on the back.
Right. Exactly. We've got to do the hard work.
Yes.
Of addressing issues, dealing with the shame and the confession and all the other things we talk about in the guide, and it has been. We're on session 4.
Oh, okay. So you're that's the confession?
Confession, yes.
Yeah. You're in confession, yeah.
And it's just been powerful. It's been very, very
powerful.
Yes. It's been enlightening even for me. It's been able to create just some great conversations in our small group and some challenging conversations.
Yeah. Trey, you hit it. One of the things I think it's like, I know that churches are, I created this originally for the local church, but I know it will be hard for a lot of pastors to lead this, because some of them have to start with themselves first before you try to lead your congregation anywhere. You can't lead people where you're not willing to go personally. Sure. So pastors have to start with themselves, but I also wanted to create something where it's not where it has to be led top down, but it can be led bottom up from the side. Any layperson, like, hey, I hear people all the time, my church won't do this, but you know what? I'm starting a group in my neighborhood. I'm starting a group at my kids' school. And that's what we want. So when I see and I hear churches doing this and you as a pastor leading this, it brings so much joy to my soul because, that is the original intent. But, I know it's hard, and you're right. A multi-ethnic church, I think, is probably one of, it's tougher than even the homogenous churches, because you do have so many different ethnicities and different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds. And so there's going to be clashing. Mm-hmm. And so when we're not addressing issues and we're not dealing with it, what happens is if too many brown people show up, you'll have white flight if you're not doing the work of reconciliation. Right. Or if too many of this show up, or, and we need solidarity, even within, marginalized groups. Like, there's a lot of anti-Blackness. There's a lot of, not understanding each other's story. Like, we don't understand the Native American story, or we don't know the Latino story, or we don't know what, the things that even our Asian American communities struggle with. I think these conversations also bring that to the table also, where it's not just binary of Black and white, but it's something that everyone can participate in, even someone that's from, maybe their context is Jamaica, it's important for them to know the story here in America. Mm-hmm. And the benefits that they also reap for being here because of the work that has been laid by some of the minority groups here, and specifically African Americans, as it relates to the civil rights movement and the changing of the immigration laws. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that story is important, and we don't teach that. And it's important to give context. So when you see things happening, there's a background story, and it's important that we understand each other's story.
It's so important. It's like you said, it's uncomfortable. I mean,
it is so uncomfortable.
Like we forced it into our small groups, and so everybody's doing it. But I'm getting, I get messages from our leaders, kind of how it's going, and it's uncomfortable. It's like it's not fun. It's
not hard. Fun. It is hard, and we have to tell people, because a lot of people think of bridge building, they're like, we're going to have kumbaya, and I'm like, no, this is when we're talking about racial bridge building. One of the things that we're talking about is, one of the elements is that we have to make sure that we're elevating that marginalized voice. If we're talking about reconciliation, so it's about repairing, that which the harm was done. You know what I'm saying? It's about making things right. And so if we're trying to do that, we have to lift up those voices that have been unheard. It's because nobody's voice, I hear people say, we have to, speak for the voiceless or stuff. Like, nobody is voiceless unless you really have a condition or something, a medical condition. It's just that people are unheard. And so when we talk about racial bridge building, that's what we have to do in these conversations, because you're talking about groups who have never had an opportunity to do any, to speak and to be heard. We give them that opportunity. I'm glad my goddaughter just came in.
Yeah. So I want to honor your time. One last question. We are as a church and as our ministry towards racial reconciliation, we're working to have hard conversations. We're leading in that. We in the city of Keller, we when we moved here and launched the church, we looked at the community and asked ourselves, how can we impact this community with respect to racial reconciliation? And one thing that came to mind was there was never a MLK celebration in the city of Keller. There had never been an MLK celebration. And so we host, since we for the last 4 years, we've hosted the MLK celebration for the city, where the city comes together and celebrates, MLK Day. And we have these other events throughout the year where we are hopefully giving a voice to the marginalized and creating space for people to have healthy conversations about race. But what advice would you give us as a church and our ministry with respect to continuing the conversation in the midst of hostility, in the midst of tension, in our country and in our communities?
Yeah, I think the thing is, we have to continue this conversation despite how hard it gets. You know, Trey, what I think about is I think about our ancestors. We're living off their legacy. We're living off the work that they put in, the foundation that they laid. Many of them did not see freedom. So when we think about slavery, many of them did not see freedom. When you think about Native Americans, many of them did not make it off the trail. Many of them, their stories will never be heard. But the work, the activism that they put in, that's the thing that keeps me going when it's hard. When I think about the hostility, when I think about the tensions, and when I think about the things that our country is facing now, I think about the things that my grandfather faced. I think about the things that my great grandfather faced. I think about, I've been doing some ancestry study, and one of my ancestors that was enslaved, his name was Little John. And I think about having a name, maybe the prayers that he prayed, or the hopelessness that he had. I'm a product of that. Mm-hmm. I'm a product of that hope that he had. And so, you know what? I think about the things that we're facing, but I say my grandfather faced worse. Mm-hmm. My story is not my father's story. My story is not my great-great-grandfather's story. We have a different story, and we have a different journey that we're facing right now in the midst of this. And I think when I look at the chaos and I look at things that are happening now, there's opportunity in the chaos. And so I can't but have hope. I'm talking to a pastor now who's leading this conversation in his congregation. That gives me hope. I know that everybody's not going to get it. I think about, everyone did not believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. Mm-hmm. Everybody didn't get that. Mm-hmm. And I understand that everybody didn't march with King. Everybody that Harriet Tubman tried to free, she wasn't able to free everyone, and everybody that had the opportunity, maybe they didn't go with it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's like, so those who have ears to listen, let them listen. And so that's the thing, is to hold this work with open hands, mm-hmm. And open heart. And those who have ears to listen, let them listen, and don't get dismayed by the people who reject you. Yeah. And reject the message, because guess what? They're not rejecting you. They're not rejecting your church. They're rejecting the one who sent us. And so that's what keeps me going. And I would say that's what should keep your church going. Everybody's not going to be in agreement, but it may be, Jesus had 12 to start out with. Mm-hmm. And we're here talking today because of those 12 that started in Northern Africa on the other side of the world. Mm-hmm. And we're here in America having this conversation because of those 12. Yeah. And so that's what I think about. That puts it in perspective for me. So, some days are hard. Some days you may talk to me and I'm like, oh, Lord, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But other days I think about that. And that's why I wanted to do some of my ancestry study, and, I'm thinking about people who didn't have opportunity and who didn't have a chance. We have that now. And so you go with those who are willing to come, and you move forth with those and let God do the rest. It's not that you don't pray for the other people, but it's just kind of like when we're talking about salvation. We can't make everybody get it, but we do our part. And I think the presence that you guys, the things that you're doing now, the work that you're doing internally on your hearts, and the work that you're doing in your church, you'll be able to help your community from the overflow of that, because it starts here and it works its way out. And so ideas will come for your community. Like you said, the MLK Day, I know one church, they have a brunch and they invite the community. The one thing I used to do in Austin, there was we had a rally. I mean, not a rally, but we would have a parade. And one year I invited my entire predominantly white staff to come. And guess what? They all came. Mm. They all came. That was the first time for some of them that have grown up in the city. That was the first time they came, and they had a great time. And now I see pictures, my first Be the Bridge group, they come out. And guess what? I even saw pictures this year. I'm not there in Austin. I'm not organizing this, but guess what? Some of those people are still going out, taking their children. That's awesome. And they would have never done that if it wasn't, if maybe I wouldn't have, invited them. And so I think is you want to invite people, but you can't make them come. So do the invite. Don't automatically assume people don't want to be a part of something, but do the invites to whatever you're creating. Do the invites and let them say no. But their story will never be, they never knew and they never were invited. Their story will be that they rejected the truth that God was trying to give them. And so I think that's the thing that we do and carry,
Latasha, that's what I needed. That's what I need.
Good, bro. We have to encourage each other. It's hard, it's tough, and I wish I could tell you it will get easier, but it's probably going to get harder, Trey. Yeah. You will lose people about this conversation. It's sad, I know pastors who have lost their jobs because of this. I know missionaries who have lost funding because of this, and so it comes with a cost.
It does.
And so, which is sad, but it shows you just the darkness that lies in our country, but I believe that God is sending lights, because when you start hearing these conversations, the stuff that we're seeing come to the forefront, to me, those are just signs for me personally as a Christian, that knowing that this stuff is on the Lord's heart, and if we take this back to, to John, 17, if we look at that, John, if we look at this, in John, the first thing, we think about is, our love that we have for one another reflects back to the Father, and so I think that's the thing, they will know me by the love that you have for one another. And I think about that, I think someone posted recently about all the one another's, like all the scriptures that talk about that, and it was like a long list, and I think, sin makes you blind. I think sin makes you even blind to the message of Jesus, where we can read this through our cultural lens. We read this through our sinful lens, and sometimes we interpret it the way we want to interpret it.
Yeah.
But God's word is the same today as it was yesterday. The same Bible and Holy Spirit that we have now is the same that, our great-great-grandparents were reading. And so it's not just about the signs of the times and what the culture was like then. It was sin then and it's sin now, And so we just got to keep doing, keep pressing. And I just think about, the pain that we're facing now, the situations that we're facing now, they're easier than what our grandparents faced. They're easier than what our parents faced, in some sense. And so I think that's the thing that keeps me going. So keep going, in spite of the difficulty, keep teaching, because you're doing the right thing, you're on the right side. And I think sometimes you got to partner up with other churches that are thinking like that with you, and put yourself in community and do self-care. Make sure your people that are doing this, that they're taking care of themselves, they're taking care of their physical needs, their emotional needs, their spiritual needs, and that sometimes you have to take a break from it. So, it's all right for, as a small group, while you're doing this, to pause and let's digest this for a couple weeks. This is not a checkbox that, like, saying, hey, we did it, we finished it. It's not about finishing it. It's about a lifestyle change, okay? And so if you need to pause and say, you know what? We're going to celebrate where we are now. We're on session 4 or 5. We're going to celebrate where we are. We're going to pause this, and we're going to talk about what God is doing. And we're going to do some social events, so it's all right. It's not just about getting to the end, but it's like, what change is happening in the process, And so don't when it gets overwhelming, sometimes you do have to take a pause, and discuss, and it may be some things where there's, some of the groups need to get together and talk and pray, and and about it where you are now. And I think it's also important that as people of color, sometimes as we're doing this, our self-care looks different. And as a person that's of European descent, a white person, that their self-care may look different. And sometimes when it comes to confession, it's good sometimes for them to confess to each other, because sometimes when that confession is good for us to confess to each other, because sometimes when that confession happens, that creates a lot of tension. And so even with that, we have to be mindful of the self-care behind that, because sometimes it's hard to hear, a really good friend say some of the things that they thought, and that's painful, and so sometimes them talking about that with someone maybe that with similar backgrounds can be helpful for us. So I'm just telling you this as you're going through the curriculum. I know these are some of the things that come up that we get feedback from, and so self-care is just a huge component. And we're gonna actually be coming out with some self-care things. A friend of mine, Kristen Hemingway, has done like a kind of like a little self-care guide. And she's working with us now. So we're going to be implementing self-care components into the Be the Bridge guide for people, just so that we're taking care of ourselves as we're doing this difficult work. So I gave you a lot there.
No, but I digested it all.
I care deeply about this. I care about churches, and once you get me going, it's hard to stop. And so because I believe that if any groups can do this, it's the kingdom of God that should be able to do this and do it well. We have the tools, and we have the tools, but we also have to realize we've been a part of the problem. Not even a part of the problem. We orchestrated the problem, in many cases, and we have to own that. And so thank you for being brave and stepping into this space and doing this work. So,
well, thank you for being brave and stepping into this and doing the work. You are an encouragement to me and to the ministry we're doing here. And I'm proud of you and proud of what you're doing. And I want to support you however I can and encourage you however I can. And so we're real quickly, tell us what's coming up. You said the book's coming out in
yes. One thing that you can do, we'll probably have some people reach out, because we're working on our website so that people can register groups, so we can get information out to them and stuff like that. But if you guys would send us pictures to info@beabridgebuilder.com, some of your groups having time, that would be great. We love to get testimonies and stories, because as we try to tell this story, what's happening in churches, your story encourages another pastor or another church. And so we want to do that. And then one of the things we have coming up is we're doing these, we're launching a youth version. And we're also this youth version, we're gonna have a faith-based side and then also more of a value-based side, because kids are, just imagine as adults what we're dealing with. But if you see what's happening in college campuses and some of the videos that we've seen lately coming out, 80% of what you learn is from your parents,
right?
Okay, and so kids are not born, with racism, but it's a part of the culture. It's a part of the American culture, so we live in a racialized society. So this is learned behavior, and they're growing up in it. So in order we have to make sure that we're giving our children anti-racism work. And so we're working on those things. And so we have a summer leadership institute coming up this summer for students, to do racial literacy work with students from middle school to early college. We have I have a book coming out October 2019. If you saw today on my I think Instagram, Facebook, I'm revealing the cover. I think the cover reveal happens, I think maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
I think the cover reveal happens tomorrow. Okay. And then, and so that's coming out. So there's a lot of excitement around there. And we have a BTV live event coming up in Wilmington, North Carolina. We did one here in Atlanta. And so we're doing one in Wilmington, North Carolina. And so those are some of the things that's happened. But they can follow, if they subscribe to our newsletter. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you can follow what's happening, because we're making sure we put this in our newsletters that go out. And then if you follow us on our social media, Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, the Facebook page, this information is, you'll get the information of the things that's up and coming. So we're excited. This is a big year. And so through the Facebook grant, that's why we're able to do the youth things, because a lot of people, they'll tell us, oh, we need something for this, we need something for that. And I'm like, that takes money and we don't have any. and so that's, some of the things that we're working on is infrastructure and all these good things. So a lot of fun stuff happening to keep the conversation going.
I love it. I love it. Well, great.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate it. And next time you're in Dallas, please let me know. I'd love to take you to dinner and come to church or whatever it may be.
Hats off to the Well Church. You guys keep going.
Thank you.
Keep having these conversations. You're doing the right thing, and just know that God is in the awkward. God is in the discomfort. And so just think about anything that we have in our life, when we think about our spiritual life, the growth that we have, the faith that we had, it all came through discomfort. And this is the same thing. So thank you guys for what you're doing, and keep it up.
We will. You as well.
Okay. You have a good one.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.